The ancient vault smelled like forgotten time. Dust particles drifted through beams of light as Talia moved between rows of data cores that hadn't been touched in centuries. Her four arms worked quickly, scanning file after file in the Galactic Commonwealth's historical archive. Most researchers avoided this section. Too much work for too little reward. But Talia loved puzzles, and something about the missing periods in galactic history bothered her. Her scanner beeped, fragment detected, corruption level high. She pulled the data crystal from its slot. The thing was older than her entire species. Carefully, she loaded it into her portable reader and watched the fragmented information scroll across the screen. Most of it was garbage, corrupted beyond recovery. But then she saw it, a species designation she had never encountered. Human origin world, Earth status, unknown. Talia felt her secondary heart skip. Unknown status meant the Commonwealth had lost track of them. That almost never happened. The galactic community tracked every spacefaring species with obsessive detail. She dug deeper into the fragment, piecing together what little remained. The humans had made contact with the Raylan approximately 800 years ago. The Raylan. Talia sat back in shock. The Raylan hegemony now controlled a quarter of known space. They were one of the most powerful civilizations in existence. But 800 years ago, according to these fragments, they had been dying. A plague, biological warfare from a conflict Talia had read about in school. The Raylan population had dropped to less than 10 million across their entire empire. Their medical science couldn't find a cure. They had accepted extinction as inevitable. Then the humans arrived. The fragment showed medical data, treatment protocols, a cure that the humans had synthesized in less than 3 months. Talia read through the casualty reports. The Raylan had been saved. Their population had recovered. They had gone on to become a galactic superpower. But what happened to the humans? She scrolled further. The next section made her breath catch. There was a formal declaration from the Raylan High Council, a debt of honor, a promise written in the old language that predated modern Raylan entirely. Should humanity ever call, we answer. No matter the cost, no matter the time. This debt will be honored across all generations until the stars grow cold. Talia had studied Raylan culture. They took oaths seriously. This kind of promise was sacred. It would be passed down through every generation of leadership. But she had never heard anyone mention humans, not once, not in any modern record. She searched the Commonwealth database for current human activity. Nothing. No registered ships, no diplomatic presence, no trade agreements. It was as if they had vanished completely. Had they gone extinct? That seemed unlikely for a species advanced enough to cure an alien plague. Had they isolated themselves? Maybe. But why? Talia spent the next 6 hours searching through every archive she could access. She found references to humans in 3 other fragments. Each one was corrupted. Each one cut off abruptly around the same time period. 782 years ago. Something had happened. Something big enough that the Commonwealth had scrubbed most of the records. But the Raylan wouldn't scrub their own records. They valued history too much. She made a decision that would change everything. Talia filed a formal request to access the Raylan historical archives. It would take weeks to get approval. She was a nobody, a junior researcher from a species that barely rated representation in the Commonwealth Senate, but she had to try. 3 days later, her request was approved. Not just approved, fast-tracked. A Raylan diplomatic courier arrived at her office with an official invitation. The director of Raylan Historical Preservation wanted to meet her personally. Talia found herself on a transport to the Raylan homeworld, wondering what she had stumbled into. The director was old even by Raylan standards. His scales had faded to pale silver, and he moved slowly, but his eyes were sharp. He met Talia in a private archive deep beneath the surface of the Raylan capital city. "You found a fragment about the humans," he said, Not a question, a statement. Yes, Director, I wanted to know what happened to them. The old Raylan was quiet for a long moment. Then he gestured for her to follow. They walked through corridors lined with data storage that predated digital technology, physical records, written by hand. The Raylan had kept everything. He stopped at a vault door. What I show you is not classified, but it is forgotten, deliberately forgotten by most of the galaxy. The Raylan do not forget. The vault opened. Inside was a chamber filled with records, but in the center stood something else. A beacon, inactive, covered in dust. 800 years ago, humanity saved us, the director said quietly. They asked for nothing in return. No territory, no resources, no political favors. They simply helped because they could. Then they left. We tried to find them. We searched for decades. They had vanished completely. What happened to them? We don't know, but we kept our promise. He walked to the beacon. This device monitors a very specific frequency, one that only human technology used. If they ever broadcast on that frequency again, this beacon will activate. The Raylan will answer. That is our oath. Has it ever activated? The director looked at her with an expression she couldn't read. That's why I brought you here. That's why I approved your request so quickly. He pointed at the beacon. A small light pulsed on its surface. Green. Active. It activated 2 days ago, he said. The humans are calling. After 800 years of silence, they're calling for help. Talia stared at the pulsing light. What are you going to do? The old Raylan's scales shifted color, a sign of determination. We're going to honor our debt. The High Council convenes tomorrow. We will answer their call. He looked at Talia. And you're coming with us. You found the record. You reminded us of what we owe. You'll be there when we repay it. Talia felt the weight of history settling on her shoulders. Somewhere in the darkness of space, humanity was calling, and the galaxy was about to remember a species it had tried very hard to forget. The Raylan High Council chamber had witnessed 1,000 years of decisions. Today it witnessed something unprecedented. Every seat was filled. Every representative had traveled from across the hegemony to be present. The chamber buzzed with conversation that died the moment council leader Vorin entered. He was younger than the previous leaders, only 300 years old, but he carried the weight of his position with absolute authority. His scales gleamed deep blue under the chamber lights as he took his place at the center podium. The beacon has activated, he announced. No preamble, no ceremony, just fact. Silence, then chaos. Impossible, someone shouted from the upper tiers. The humans are extinct. Everyone knows this. Everyone assumes this, Vorin corrected. There is a difference between assumption and fact. Counselor Tresh stood. She was old, traditional, and commanded respect. Even if the signal is genuine, we don't know what situation we're answering. 800 years is a long time. We could be walking into a trap. A trap by whom? Vorin asked. Who even remembers the humans besides us? Exactly my point, Tresh continued. Someone could have found old human technology. They could be using it to manipulate us. The Kryn Empire has been looking for any excuse to challenge our authority. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. The Kryn were a problem. They had been expanding aggressively for the past century. Several border skirmishes had already occurred. War seemed inevitable. Talia sat in the observer section, watching the debate unfold. She understood Tresh's concern. The political situation was delicate, but she also remembered the oath carved into ancient stone in the archives, the promise that transcended politics. Vorin let the debate continue for several minutes before raising his hand for silence. I have read the oath our ancestors made. I have studied what the humans did for us. They saved our entire species and asked for nothing. Nothing. When has any civilization ever done that? That was 800 years ago, another counselor argued. We don't owe descendants for the actions of their ancestors. You're right, Voron agreed, surprising everyone. We don't owe the descendants, we owe the entire species. The oath doesn't mention individuals. It promises that if humanity calls, we answer. Not if the specific humans who helped us call, if humanity calls. He activated a holographic display. The chamber filled with data. This is the signal we received. It's been authenticated by 3 independent analysis teams. The encryption matches human protocols from our historical records. The origin point is in a region we designated the Void Belt. Unexplored, dangerous. No one goes there. Why would humans be there? Someone asked. That is what we need to find out. Voron's voice hardened. I'm not asking for a vote on whether we investigate. I'm informing you that a fleet will be dispatched. The only question is how large that fleet will be. Trash stood again. If you do this, the Kryn will see it as a sign of weakness. They'll claim we're chasing ghosts while they expand into disputed territories. Let them think what they want, Voron said. The Raylan honor their debts. That's not weakness. That's integrity, something the Kryn will never understand. The vote was called, 67 in favor, 33 against. The fleet would be substantial, 15 cruisers, 5 carriers, enough to investigate thoroughly and defend themselves if necessary. As the council adjourned, Talia found herself approached by Voron himself. You'll be joining the expedition, he told her. Your research started this. You should see it through. I'm not military, she protested. Neither were the humans, apparently. They were explorers, scientists, healers, yet they saved us. He placed a hand on her shoulder. Sometimes the most important people aren't the ones with weapons. The fleet assembled in orbit within 3 days. Talia boarded the flagship and tried not to feel overwhelmed. She had never been on a military vessel before. Everything was efficient, organized, intimidating. But what really intimidated her was the reaction from other species. News of the fleet deployment had spread. The galactic networks were full of speculation, most of it skeptical, some of it hostile. The Kryn Empire had issued a formal statement calling the expedition a waste of resources. They suggested the Raylan were suffering from historical delusions and should focus on present realities instead of ancient myths. Several other species had dispatched their own scout ships, not to help, to spy. Everyone wanted to know what the Raylan were really doing. No one believed the official explanation about humans. The fleet entered hyperspace. The journey to the Void Belt would take 2 weeks. Talia spent her time studying everything available about humans. There wasn't much. Scattered references. Incomplete medical data from the plague cure. A few images so corrupted she couldn't make out details. But one thing became clear. Humans had possessed advanced technology, not the most advanced in the galaxy, but sophisticated enough. Their ships had been fast. Their computers had been powerful. So why had they vanished so completely? She brought her questions to Fleet Commander Dren. He was a practical soldier who had initially opposed the mission, but now executed it with professional precision. Maybe they didn't want to be found, he suggested as they reviewed navigational data in the war room. Some species value isolation. They make contact, accomplish what they want, then leave. But why the Void Belt? That region is dangerous, unstable stellar formations, radiation storms. It's not suitable for colonization. Maybe that's exactly why they chose it. If you don't want visitors, you go somewhere visitors won't follow. The fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Void Belt. Sensors immediately started screaming warnings. The region was even more chaotic than charts indicated. But there, on long-range scanners, something massive appeared. Structure detected, artificial, scale extreme. Dren's expression shifted from skepticism to shock. That's not a station. That's too big to be a station. The structure slowly resolved on their screens. It was a ship, not just any ship. A generation vessel. The kind of ship designed to carry an entire population across vast distances over centuries. It hung in space like a sleeping giant, dark, quiet, but not dead. Power signatures flickered across its hull, emergency levels, barely enough to maintain life support. "Open a channel," Vorin ordered. "All frequencies. Broadcast our identification and the oath. Let them know the Raylan have come." The communications officer worked frantically. Then, after several minutes of static, a response came through. The voice was human, female, tired but clear. "Raylan vessel, this is Commander Annie Grant of the human colony ship Perseverance. We received your message. We've been waiting a long time for someone to answer. We have a situation here. A big one. Permission to come aboard and explain." Vorin looked at Dren, then at Talia, then back at the viewscreen showing the massive human ship. "Permission granted, Commander Grant. Welcome back to Galactic Civilization. We have much to discuss." Commander Annie Grant didn't look like someone who had just saved her species from extinction. She looked exhausted. Her uniform was clean but worn. Her face showed lines that came from too many years of too much responsibility. But her eyes were sharp and focused as she stood in the Raylan flagship's conference room. 3 other humans accompanied her, a medical officer, an engineer, and someone she introduced simply as Dr. Huang, their chief scientist. They all had that same worn look, like people who had been running on emergency power for too long. Vorin gestured for them to sit. "Commander, you called. We answered. Now please tell us what happened to your people." Annie took a breath. "How much do you know about what happened after we cured the plague?" "Nothing," Vorin admitted. "Your species vanished from all records approximately 780 years ago. We searched. We found nothing." "You weren't meant to," Annie said bitterly. "We were erased, deliberately." She activated a data pad and projected historical files into the air. Images appeared. Battles, destruction, diplomatic chambers filled with angry aliens. After we helped the Raylan, we continued exploring, making contact, helping where we could. We were good at it. Too good, apparently. 50 years after curing your plague, a war broke out in the Outer Rim. 3 species fighting over territory, millions dying. The Commonwealth asked us to help negotiate peace. Dr. Huang continued the story. "We brokered a ceasefire. We got all 3 sides talking. We were making progress. Then one of the species, the Venturi, broke the agreement. They launched a surprise attack, killed the diplomats from the other 2 species. Would have killed our team too if we hadn't fought back." "We had to," Annie said quietly. "Our diplomatic ship had minimal weapons, but we used what we had. We disabled their attack fleet. We stopped them from completing the massacre. We saved thousands of lives." "That sounds honorable," Vorin said, confused. "Why would that cause you to be erased?" Annie's laugh was hollow. "Because we were too effective. We stopped the Venturi fleet with 1 ship, 1 diplomatic vessel against 15 warships. We did what entire Commonwealth battle groups couldn't do, and that terrified everyone." The images shifted. Commonwealth Council chambers, debates, accusations. "They called us dangerous," the medical officer spoke for the first time. "Said we were too violent, too unpredictable. They didn't care that we only fought in self-defense. They didn't care that we saved lives. They saw what we could do, and it scared them more than the actual warmongers." "A coalition formed," Annie continued. 27 species, led by the Venturi, ironically. They demanded humanity be punished for excessive force. The Commonwealth voted. It wasn't even close. She pulled up the final decree. Talia read it from her observer seat. Her blood went cold. Humanity was given a choice: accept execution of their entire species, or accept permanent exile beyond the borders of known space. They would be given 1 year to evacuate all human colonies, all human ships, every single person. They had to leave and never return. Any human found within Commonwealth space after the deadline would be killed on sight. We took exile, Annie said. What else could we do? We loaded every ship we could find. Generation vessels, cargo haulers, anything that could make the journey. We came here, to the void belt. The one place no one would ever look because no one would ever want to live here. 800 years, Voron said quietly. Your people survived here for 800 years. Barely. Dr. Huang pulled up schematics of the generation ship. We've been maintaining a population of about 3 million, living on recycled everything. Our technology has advanced, but our resources are finite. We've been slowly dying, not from any single cause, just from the grinding reality of isolation. Why call now? Drin asked. Why after all this time? Annie's expression changed. Fear replaced bitterness. Because we found something. Something that makes our exile meaningless. Something that will destroy the entire galaxy if it's not stopped. She pulled up new images. These weren't historical files. These were recent scans. Space itself seemed wrong in the pictures, twisted, dark. 6 months ago, our long-range sensors detected an anomaly 3 sectors from here. We sent a probe. What we found was impossible. An ancient machine network, dormant for millions of years, designed by a species that doesn't exist anymore. What does it do? Talia asked, unable to stay silent. It cleanses, Dr. Huang said. That's the best translation we could find in its programming. It detects biological life across vast distances. Then it eliminates that life. Completely. Down to the microbial level. The species that built it apparently believed biological life was a contamination. They created this network to keep the galaxy sterile. Why didn't it activate before now? Voron demanded. It has, Annie said. We found evidence of 7 previous activation cycles, each one spaced millions of years apart. Each one corresponds to mass extinction events in the galactic fossil record. The network wakes up, kills everything, goes dormant until life evolves again, then repeats. She pulled up the final image, a star chart showing the void belt and surrounding sectors. Red markers spread across the map like an infection. The network is waking up again. Our probe must have triggered something. Warning systems, defensive protocols, we don't know. But what we do know is that the network is activating, all of it. Billions of machines spread across this entire region of space. They're powering up, running diagnostics, getting ready. Ready for what? Dren asked, though his voice suggested he already knew. For the cleanse, Annie said. In approximately 3 weeks, those machines will achieve full operational status. Then they'll sweep through the galaxy in a wave. Every planet with biological life will be sterilized. Every station, every ship, everything. The galaxy will be dead within 6 months of activation. The room was silent, completely silent. Voron finally spoke. You said you called because you can't stop it alone. Does that mean you can stop it with help? Maybe, Annie admitted. We've been studying it for 6 months. We've developed weapons, tactics, countermeasures. We know how the network thinks, how it operates. We've been preparing for this since we found it. But there are billions of machines. We have maybe 1,000 combat-capable ships. We need help. Why would the galaxy help humanity? Dren asked bluntly. They exiled you. They've probably forgotten you exist. Annie looked at each of them. That's why we called the Raylan. You kept your oath for 800 years. You came when we called. We're hoping you can convince the others, because if you can't, everyone dies, including you. Voron stood. Commander Grant, the Raylan will help. That is guaranteed. As for the rest of the galaxy, we'll contact the Commonwealth immediately. We'll explain the situation. They won't believe you, Annie said quietly. Then we'll make them believe, Voron said firmly, one way or another. The Commonwealth emergency session was a disaster from the beginning. Voron stood before the assembled representatives of 214 species and tried to maintain his composure while chaos erupted around him. You're asking us to believe in ancient killer machines. the Kryn ambassador shouted over the noise. Based on the word of a species that was exiled for excessive violence, a species that somehow miraculously appeared right when the Raylan needed justification for military buildup near our borders. This has nothing to do with your territorial disputes, Vorin shot back. This is about survival. The entire galaxy is at risk. Where's your proof? Another representative demanded. Show us these machines. Let our scientists verify the threat. There isn't time, Vorin said. The activation sequence is already underway. We have 3 weeks, maybe less. How convenient, the Kryn ambassador sneered. A crisis that requires immediate military action with no time for verification. The Raylan must think we're fools. Talia watched from the observer gallery as the session devolved further. Half the species present didn't even remember humans had existed. The other half remembered just enough to be suspicious. Several ambassadors were openly accusing Vorin of fabricating the entire scenario. The vote was called. The Commonwealth would not authorize military action. They would not commit resources. They would send a scientific survey team to investigate. That team would report back in 6 weeks. 6 weeks, 3 weeks too late. Vorin returned to the flagship with barely contained rage. They're going to die, he said to Dren. All of them. And they won't realize it until the machines are already killing them. So what do? Dren asked. We honor our oath. The Raylan fleet stays. We fight with the humans. If the galaxy won't save itself, we'll save it anyway. But the Raylan fleet wasn't enough. Vorin knew it. Dren knew it. And Annie Grant definitely knew it when Vorin explained what had happened. We expected this, she said calmly, too calmly. We've been planning for this exact scenario. We didn't really think they'd help. That's why we've spent 6 months preparing. She brought Vorin and his senior staff to the human generation ship. They traveled deep into its interior, past living sections and agricultural domes, until they reached a massive bay that had been converted into something else entirely. This is our war room, Annie explained. The bay was filled with holographic displays showing the entire region of space. Red markers indicated machine network nodes, thousands of them. Blue markers showed human defensive positions. There were pitifully few. Admiral Owen Reese was waiting for them. He was older than Annie, with gray hair and scars that suggested a long military career. He studied the Raylan officers with calculating eyes. Welcome to the party, he said. His voice was rough. Hope you brought enough firepower because we're significantly outnumbered. How outnumbered? Dren asked. Owen pulled up tactical projections. Current estimates put the machine network at approximately 11 million autonomous units, combat-capable, self-repairing, networked intelligence. They'll coordinate perfectly. No fear, no hesitation. They'll just keep coming until everything biological is dead. 11 million, Dren looked ill. We have 15 ships. We have 1,043, Owen corrected. Most of them aren't military, converted haulers, mining ships with weapons bolted on, but they'll fight. We don't have a choice. This is suicide, Dren said. Probably, Owen agreed. But we've got some advantages. We've been studying these machines. We know how they think. We know their weaknesses. And we've developed specific weapons to exploit those weaknesses. He activated another display. This one showed the void belt itself, but the void belt looked different. There were structures hidden throughout the region. Platforms, weapon emplacements, networks of defensive installations. We've been building for 800 years, Annie explained. Not much. Our resources are limited, but enough. We've turned the void belt into a fortress. Every asteroid has been weaponized. Every radiation storm has been rigged with mines. The machines will have to come through here to reach the rest of the galaxy, and we're going to make them bleed for every meter. You built all this in secret, Vorin was stunned. We had time, Owen said, and motivation. We knew someday something would happen. maybe invasion, maybe the Commonwealth deciding to finish what they started. We couldn't predict what, but we could prepare. This network isn't designed to hold forever. It's designed to buy time. Time for what? Dren asked. Owen smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. Time for our real weapon to deploy. He pulled up new schematics. These showed something Talia couldn't fully understand, some kind of program, adaptive, self-modifying, aggressive. The machines operate on networked intelligence, Dr. Huang explained, appearing beside them. They share data, processing power, tactical information. It makes them incredibly effective, but it also makes them vulnerable. We've created a weapon specifically designed to attack that network. We call it the Cascade. It's a virus, Owen continued, but not like any virus you've seen. It infiltrates the machine network, copies their protocols, then turns them against each other, subtly at first. Small errors, miscommunications, then larger ones. Friendly fire, resource conflicts. Eventually, if it works, the entire network tears itself apart. If it works, Voren repeated. We've only tested it in simulations, Annie admitted. We haven't been able to capture an actual machine to test it on, but the theory is sound. We just need to deploy it into their network, which means getting close enough to one of their command nodes. How close? Dren asked. Owen pointed at the tactical map. Right here, the central processing hub. It's the most heavily defended position in the entire network. We'll need to fight through approximately 50,000 machines just to reach it, then survive long enough to upload the virus, then fight our way back out. That's impossible, Dren said flatly. Yeah, Owen agreed. That's why we called for help. Figured if we were going to die trying, might as well have company. Voren studied the map. The odds were absurd. The plan was barely more than a desperate gamble. Every rational calculation said they would fail, but he thought about the oath, about 800 years of promises kept, about what his ancestors would expect of him. We're in, he said. Tell us what you need. Annie and Owen exchanged glances. Then Owen started explaining their battle plan. It was insane, brutal, likely to get everyone killed. It was also the only chance they had. Meanwhile, in Commonwealth space, the Kryn Empire mobilized its fleets toward Raylan borders. They saw opportunity in the Raylan's distraction. They saw weakness to exploit. They had no idea what was coming. None of them did. Not the Kryn, not the Commonwealth, not the hundreds of species going about their daily lives completely unaware that in 3 weeks extinction machines would activate. Only the Raylan and the humans knew, and they were preparing to go to war against impossible odds, because someone had to, because it was right, because debts had to be honored even if everyone else had forgotten what honor meant. The machines arrived on schedule, punctual, efficient, merciless. Talia watched from the command deck of the Raylan flagship as sensors detected the first wave. Thousands of signatures appeared at the edge of their detection range. Then tens of thousands. Then hundreds of thousands. The displays couldn't keep up with the count. They're not even trying to hide, Dren muttered. They don't need to. The machines moved in perfect formation. Each unit was roughly the size of a small fighter craft, black metal, angular, no visible weapons until they got close enough to use them. They traveled in geometric patterns that hurt to look at, too precise, too perfect. Nothing biological moved like that. Owen's voice crackled over the communication channel. All ships, this is Admiral Reese. Battle stations. Remember your assignments, trust your training. And for those of you who have never been in combat before, welcome to hell. Try not to die in the first 5 minutes. The human fleet spread out across the defensive line, 1,000 ships against millions. The Raylan ships took positions alongside them, 15 against infinity. First contact in 90 seconds, the tactical officer reported. Voren stood at his command position, scales shifted to deep red, battle color. All weapons ready, Engage on my mark. The machines entered weapons range. They didn't slow down, didn't attempt communication. They just came forward like a wave of metal death. Mark, Vorin said calmly. The space between the fleets lit up with weapons fire. Raylan plasma cannons, human rail guns, energy beams and kinetic rounds and missiles that streaked through the darkness. The first line of machines dissolved under the onslaught. Then the second line, the third, the fourth. But they kept coming. For every machine destroyed, 3 more took its place. The numbers were overwhelming. Talia watched ships on both sides start taking damage. Human vessels had shields, but they were old technology, not as effective as modern Commonwealth equipment. Several ships lost shields within the first minute. Then she saw what made humans terrifying in combat. A human mining ship, barely armed, lost its shields completely. 3 machines targeted it for destruction. The ship didn't retreat. Instead, it accelerated directly toward the machines, rammed them. The collision destroyed all 4 vessels in a brilliant explosion. Did they just? Dren couldn't finish the sentence. Suicide run, Owen confirmed over the channel. His voice was grim. Mining ship Prosperity, crew of 12. They knew their ship couldn't survive, decided to take some machines with them. Someone note their names for the memorial. It kept happening. Human ships that couldn't fight effectively found other ways to contribute. Ramming, overloading their reactors near machine formations. One freighter, completely unarmed, used its cargo bay to release thousands of tons of debris directly into a machine squadron. The machines got tangled in the wreckage, creating a gap in their formation. These humans are insane, Dren said with something like awe. They're desperate, Vorin corrected, and they've been preparing for this. Watch how they fight. The humans didn't fight like any military force Talia had studied. They didn't maintain formation, didn't follow standard tactical doctrine. Instead, they adapted constantly, improvised. Each ship operated semi-independently, but somehow they coordinated perfectly. When one ship was damaged, 2 others covered it. When ammunition ran low, ships rotated positions. And they were vicious. Raylan forces fought with honor and discipline. Humans fought like they had nothing to lose, because they didn't. Every single human in this battle knew they were fighting for their species' survival. That made them dangerous in ways no simulation could predict. Admiral, the tactical officer, called out. The defensive installations are activating. Throughout the Void Belt, the hidden weapons platforms came online. Mines detonated in carefully calculated positions. Energy weapons fired from inside asteroid fields. The machines flew into kill zones that had been prepared over centuries. The destruction was spectacular. Millions of machines died in the first coordinated barrage, but millions more kept coming. Second wave arriving, sensors reported. Count is, I can't get an accurate count. Estimate 3 million additional units. Of course there are, Owen said. All ships, remember the plan. We just need to hold them here. Buy time for the strike team. The strike team. Vorin tried not to think about it. Annie Grant had personally led a small squadron of the fastest human ships on a suicide mission. They were currently navigating through the battle, trying to reach the central processing hub. Their mission was simple: get close, upload the Cascade virus, don't die, in that order. But preferably accomplish all 3. Strike team has reached Waypoint Delta, communications reported. Estimate 15 minutes to target. 15 minutes. Talia looked at the tactical display. They had been fighting for 20 minutes. Already, dozens of ships were gone, human and Raylan both. The machine numbers were dropping, but not fast enough. Simple math said they would be overwhelmed in another hour. Everything depended on the strike team. A human cruiser exploded near the flagship. Too close, debris pelted their shields, alarms screamed, damage reports flooded in. Port shields at 40%, someone shouted. Redirect power from secondary systems, Dren ordered. Keep those shields up. A machine squadron broke through the defensive line, 6 units heading straight for the flagship. Rail and point defense engaged, got 4 of them. The last 2 kept coming. Then a human ship intercepted. It was small, a scout vessel, barely armed, but it put itself between the machines and the flagship, took both impacts. The ship disintegrated. "Who was that?" Voran demanded. "Scout Ship Horizon," Communications replied. "Single pilot, name was Sarah Lynn." Sarah Lynn. Talia made a mental note. Another name for the memorial. Another human who died protecting others. How many more names would there be before this was over? "Strike team is under heavy fire," Communications announced. "Multiple casualties. They're requesting support." "We can't send support," Owen said. "Everyone else is engaged. They're on their own." The channel crackled. Annie Grant's voice came through, distorted by damage. "We don't need support. We need you to keep those machines off our backs for 10 more minutes. Can you do that?" Voran looked at the tactical display. The situation was deteriorating. Ships were failing. Shields were dropping. The machines were adapting to their tactics. 10 more minutes seemed impossible. "We'll hold," he said. "Get that virus deployed, Commander." "Copy that, Grant out." Talia watched the battle unfold with sick fascination. This was what humans had been exiled for. This capacity for controlled violence. This willingness to sacrifice everything. The Commonwealth had feared this. They had seen what humans could do and decided it was too dangerous. Now that danger was the only thing standing between the galaxy and extinction. And the galaxy didn't even know. Wouldn't know until it was over. If it was ever over. "Strike team at target," Communications reported. "They're engaging the command hub defenses. Upload will begin in 3 minutes. 3 minutes. Then the virus would deploy. Then they'd find out if 800 years of preparation was enough. If human ingenuity could overcome machine perfection. If sacrifices like Sarah Lynn's meant anything. 3 minutes to save the galaxy, or watch it die. The virus worked. For approximately 14 seconds, nothing happened. Then the machines started dying. Not all at once. That would have been too simple. Instead, the destruction spread like ripples across water. A squadron would suddenly break formation, attack its own units. Then those units would turn on others. The confusion spread through the machine network at exponential speed. "It's working," Dr. Huang's voice came through the channel. She was with the strike team, monitoring the virus deployment. "The cascade is propagating through their command structure. They're fighting each other." Talia watched the tactical display transform. The organized geometric patterns dissolved into chaos. Machines that had moved with perfect coordination now collided with each other, fired on each other, tore each other apart with mechanical efficiency turned inward. "All ships fall back to secondary positions," Owen ordered. "Let them destroy each other. Conserve ammunition." The human and Raylan forces retreated. They didn't need to fight anymore. The machines were doing the work for them. Millions of units engaged in self-destructive combat. The space around the void belt became a graveyard of shattered metal. But it wasn't over. Annie Grant's voice cut through the celebration. "Command Hub is launching countermeasures. They're trying to purge the virus. We need to get out of here now." "Strike team withdraw immediately," Voran ordered. "Negative," Annie replied. Her transmission was breaking up. "Heavy damage. We've taken critical hits. Engines are gone. We're not going anywhere." "Then we'll send recovery ships," Voran said. "No time. The hub is activating emergency protocols. It's going to self-destruct. Take out everything within 50 kilometers. You need to clear the area." "Commander, there must be another way." "There isn't." Annie's voice was calm, accepting. "We knew this was one way when we volunteered. The virus is deployed. The machines are falling. Mission accomplished. Get everyone else out of here. That's an order from the ranking human officer." Owen's voice came through, rough, angry but professional. Confirmed, all ships emergency jump. Get clear of the hub, move now. The fleet scattered, engines burning at maximum, racing away from the command hub as it began to collapse. The structure was massive. When it detonated, the explosion would be catastrophic. Talia watched the scanners. Annie's ship was still there, along with 4 other vessels from the strike team, all damaged, all unable to escape. We could send a shuttle, Dren suggested quietly. Not enough time, Vorin said. His scales had shifted to gray, morning color. They know that, they accepted it. The command hub detonated. The explosion consumed everything within the kill radius. 5 human ships, 37 crew members, including Commander Annie Grant, the woman who had called across 800 years of silence for help, the woman who had trusted the Raylan to keep their oath. She died saving a galaxy that had exiled her species. The machines continued destroying each other for another 6 hours. By the time the Cascade virus had run its course, 93% of the network was eliminated. The remaining units, isolated and unable to coordinate, were hunted down by combined human and Raylan forces. 48 hours after the battle began, the threat was over. The Commonwealth emergency session was very different this time. Vorin stood before the same assembly and showed them recordings of the battle, machine networks, human sacrifices, the virus deployment, everything. The chamber was silent when the recordings ended. This threat was real, Vorin said quietly. The machines would have killed every biological species in the galaxy within 6 months. The humans discovered it. The humans stopped it. The humans saved all of you, at the cost of 42 ships and 1,317 lives. Including Commander Annie Grant, Talia added from her position. She had been granted speaking privileges as the researcher who started everything. The woman who called for help, the woman who led the mission, she's dead, along with hundreds of others. They died protecting a galaxy that exiled them. The Kryn ambassador stood. For once he looked uncomfortable. We didn't know, the threat seemed impossible. It was impossible, Owen Reese said. He had joined the session via hologram. That's why we prepared for it anyway. That's what you do when survival is at stake. You prepare for the impossible. The Raylan honored their debt, Vorin continued. We fought alongside humanity because we promised we would. 800 years ago, they saved us. Yesterday, we helped them save everyone. That's what honor means, remembering, acting, regardless of cost. A representative from a species Talia didn't recognize stood. What does humanity want? Restoration of citizenship, territory, reparations for the exile. Owen's hologram laughed. It was a bitter sound. We don't want anything from you. We never did. That was always your problem. You couldn't understand why we'd help without demanding payment, why we'd fight without claiming territory. You saw kindness as weakness, saw restraint as strategy, so you exiled us. He looked across the assembly. We're going back to the Void Belt, back to our home. The home we built after you kicked us out. We'll stay there. We'll survive there, like we've been doing for 800 years, alone. Because we learned a long time ago that we can't trust the galaxy to do the right thing. The Raylan will maintain our alliance with humanity, Vorin announced. Trade agreements, mutual defense, technology exchange, they've earned it, multiple times over. Several other species quickly voiced similar intentions. Everyone wanted to be on humanity's good side now. Now that they'd seen what humans could do, now that humans had saved them. The vote was called. The exile was officially rescinded. Humanity was welcome to return to Commonwealth space. Full citizenship restored. All previous charges dropped. It was unanimous. Owen declined on behalf of his species. We'll remember that it took extinction machines at your doorstep for you to admit you were wrong. We'll remember that none of you helped when we called. Only the Raylan answered. Only the Raylan kept their oath. That tells us everything we need to know about the galaxy. The session ended. The Commonwealth representatives left, many looking ashamed, some looking relieved, a few looking thoughtful. Talia found herself back on the Raylan flagship, heading toward the Void Belt one final time. Vorin had offered to help the humans rebuild, to provide resources, technology, support. Owen had accepted, carefully, with conditions, but he'd accepted. "Why do you think they're so cautious?" Talia asked Vorin as they traveled. "Because trust, once broken, is nearly impossible to rebuild," Vorin replied. "The galaxy betrayed them, exiled them, left them to die, then ignored them when they called for help. One battle doesn't erase 800 years of abandonment. Will they ever forgive the galaxy?" "I don't know, but I know they'll never forget, and neither will we. The Raylan will remember what humanity did. We'll teach our children, our children's children. 800 years from now, our descendants will still honor this debt, because that's what it means to be Raylan." They entered the Void Belt. The human generation ship was still there, still damaged, but around it construction was beginning. New stations, new ships. The humans were building again, growing with Raylan help. Talia thought about Annie Grant, about Sarah Lynn, about all the humans who had died protecting a galaxy that hated them. She thought about the oath carved in ancient stone, about promises kept across centuries. And she updated her historical records one final time. The entry was simple, factual, true. Humanity saved the galaxy twice, once from plague, once from extinction, both times. They asked for nothing in return. The first time the galaxy exiled them. The second time the galaxy learned to fear them. Perhaps someday the galaxy will learn to deserve them. Until then they remain in the Void Belt, watching, waiting, ready. Because if the galaxy ever needs saving again, humanity will answer. Not because they forgive, not because they forget, but because saving others is simply what humans do, even when those others don't deserve it. She saved the file, transmitted it to every archive in Commonwealth space. Let the galaxy read it. Let them understand. Let them remember. The debt was paid. The galaxy was saved. And humanity, exiled and forgotten, had become the most terrifying force in known space. Not because of their weapons, not because of their technology, but because they possessed something the galaxy had lost long ago. The will to sacrifice everything for people who had given them nothing but pain. That was the lesson. That was what made the galaxy tremble, not human violence, but human virtue, turned toward a purpose that couldn't be bought, couldn't be controlled, couldn't be stopped. The galaxy had tried to forget humanity. Now it never would. For better or worse, the humans were remembered, and they were feared, and perhaps, given time, they might even be respected. But trust, that would take more than one battle, more than one debt repaid. That would take centuries. The humans had time. They'd already survived 800 years alone. They could survive 800 more, waiting, watching, ready to save a galaxy that still didn't understand them. And probably never would.